So thank you everyone for coming here today and joining us. For those of you coming from Eventbrite, we are Ama La Vida. We are a life, health and wellness leadership and career coaching company. And my name is Justice, and I'm a relationship strategist here on the team. And what that means is when you schedule a conversation to talk with one of our strategists, we'll have a half-hour complimentary call where we kind of ask you questions just to know a little bit more about you and your current situation and what the goals that you have for yourself are. And then at the end of that call, we are going to pair you up with a coach or coaches on our team that we think are most appropriately suited to help you accomplish those goals based on their particular backgrounds, personalities, and skill sets. So with all that being said, if anyone has anything top of mind they would like to share, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to my calendar. It is first come, first serve, so I highly recommend getting in there as soon as possible. And anybody who comes to us from a webinar gets your first session free. So it's something to consider when you're looking at budgeting and things like that. So my calendar is there if anyone needs it. And other than that, we have Coach Leslie here with us today talking about building your own confidence. So Leslie, the floor is yours.
Welcome everybody to Building Your Own Confidence. Justice did a great job talking about Ama La Vida, so I'm just going to piggyback on some of what he had to say, and that is basically that Ama La Vida is one of the world's leading career leadership, health, and life coaching companies. Ama La Vida, which means to love life, exists to help you on your ongoing journey to become the person you want to be and to enjoy life to its fullest. We partner with corporations, universities, and individuals to provide personalized coaching across our many areas of expertise. But the thing they all have in common is a deep desire to always be bettering and to be surrounded by others who understand and support them in pursuing their passions and goals, which is why I love working with Ama La Vida. So I'm Leslie. I am a life and health and wellness coach here. And through my own experience, I learned that how we think about and how we approach the world around us can have a direct impact on how we experience our life. It's the choices we make and the truths that we tell ourselves. So also the untruths that we tell ourselves that empower us to move into the life we want. So some of the areas that I address, I include self-care, behavior modification, goal setting, public speaking, which is a big one for a lot of people, especially in corporate. And that's just to name a few. There are several things that I talk about, and you're welcome to check out my bio to find out more. I also like to leave space to discuss your own personal topics so we can customize and address your most essential topics and issues. So with that said, let's get into what we will experience with this webinar today. So today you're going to discover your own talents and skills. You're going to work against imposter syndrome and the negative internal talk that feeds into that. Don't forget everything and run. So we're going to talk about fear a little bit, and it's not what you're probably used to hearing. And then behavior skills to practice and improve confidence in all situations. And these are just practical techniques I'm going to give you that you can apply right now. So as we go through, I want you to embrace that. I'm going to throw questions at you that will get you thinking about confidence and where you are in your confidence. And hopefully you'll have something to take away that, again, you can apply right now. So with that, before we get into it, what is confidence? All right, well, we'll see what it's coming up. Bear with me. There we go.
What often distinguishes fulfilled from unfulfilled lives is an ingredient that's not part of the educational curriculum and that can sound vague, silly, and Californian in the bad sense: confidence. It's humbling to realize just how many great achievements haven't been the result of superior talent or technical know-how, merely that strange buoyancy of the soul that we call confidence. Why is confidence so easy to lack? Partly, it's a hangover from the past. For thousands of years, for most of us, there simply were no opportunities for hope. We were serfs and slaves, and the central psychological survival skill was to keep our heads down and our expectations low. Each of us still carries a little of the legacy from that past, an attitude of inner serfdom that threatens our spirit deep into a democratic, technological modern age. Hope can feel dangerous. There might in addition have been parents who sent out subtle messages. People like us don't. Who do you take yourself for? We should feel compassionate about where those defensive parental messages came from. They were a protection, a survival strategy, and an escape from humiliation. School didn't necessarily help either. It wanted us to be good boys and girls and taught us to trust in established authority. But we may naively have gone on too long putting too much faith in existing institutions and now suffer from doing whatever is asked of us a little too obediently. Part of becoming an adult seems to be to embrace the painful realization that grown-ups don't actually have all the answers, and therefore that we have every right, indeed a duty, to break certain rules and think things through independently. We need to learn a calculated form of disrespect, which can be a surprising thing after 20 years or so of enforced obedience. We need to learn a constructive suspicion of authority, a path between total compliance on the one hand and sullen skepticism on the other. In addition, confidence seems to involve a courage to accept imperfection. It's tempting never to get going when everything has to be perfect. But that's a recipe for remaining under the bed. And yet how often so-called great lives have been riddled with errors that nevertheless didn't sink them. Confidence begins with a capacity to forgive oneself the horrors of the first go. Death is a necessary thought too. We should use it not to further sadden us, but to scare us fruitfully into taking some action. Our fear of messing up should give way to the only real danger there is, that of never trying.
All right, so in the chat, feel free to share some of what came up for you as it talked about what confidence actually is. And I know that Justice will be taking note of that, and feel free to share. But I hope that it gave you a well-rounded piece. And we are going to talk a little bit about some of the topics that it talked about, especially like perfectionism. I know that is it freezes us and it keeps us from moving forward because we're so concerned about making sure that everything is right and we have everything prepared and ready to go. But a lot of times what we learn as we go is some of the mistakes that we make. So it's really important to embrace sometimes being wrong, and it's okay to do that. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on through the day. One of my favorite quotes is "Be yourself because everyone else is taken." First time I saw that, I'm like, whoa, it's so true. And I do some acting. So even as an actor, they tell you to just be yourself. And as an actor, it's like, well, who's that? But being yourself takes self-discovery a lot of times. So who are you? Do you even know? You know, I'm sure you know the titles you give yourself, right? Mother, sister, brother, friend, colleague, SVP, and the list goes on and on. But depending upon your audience, that's who you're trying to shine for. But you have to think about shining for yourself. There is confidence in probably drawing from each one of those titles, right? You proud of being a mom or being a executive or a CEO or whatever that is, because you've worked hard in that and there's a level of pride there. But what happens when it's just you? Just who you are? That's when it's really up to you to really tap into that confidence. So there are probably hundreds of questions that you could ask, and figuring out what your self-awareness is requires asking some of those questions. I'm going to ask one of you right now. In the chat, I want you to describe yourself in 3 words. Now I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to throw some other questions out at you as we go, but I'd like you to share 3 words that describe you in the chat, and we'll circle back to that on the other side of some of these other sections that I'm going to talk about. So I brought up a list of self-awareness questions that you can ask yourself, and they're in different categories. So there are much more than I'm going to cover here today, but I'm going to start with just these few. So some self-awareness questions on values and life goals is, one is, what does your ideal you look like? What's great about that question, and I have a wonderful, I recommend to my clients this really great exercise for that particular question. And that is to write out your life the way you would like it to be, but write it out like a story, as if you were talking to your friend and saying, hey, I get up in my dream home every day and I go downstairs to my gourmet kitchen and I use my favorite coffee maker to make my favorite specific blend of coffee. And obviously these are exaggerations, but I want you to think big and think about the life you really want. No judgment, no limits, just write it out like a story as if you're talking to your friend. And that really helps you to remember some of the dreams you had maybe long ago. It also taps into some of that stuff that's sitting there that you've been holding on to and not allowing yourself to say, yeah, that's not working and this is working and I'd like more of this and I'd like it to look like that. So think about that. What does your ideal you look like? What kinds of dreams and goals do you have? That would fall into that exercise as well. Why are these dreams or goals important? And more importantly, what's keeping you from these dreams and goals? What's stopping you? It's more than likely some of that self-talk that we'll talk about going forward. Some other self-awareness questions on personality. What is your biggest strength? A lot of people follow that up with, what is your biggest area of improvement? I don't like to say weaknesses because weaknesses it has such a negative connotation. So you want areas of improvement because we're learning forever. You know, living is a constant area of learning. So what are some areas that can improve, and what are your biggest strengths? What things scare you? And don't be surprised if one of those things that scares you is success, right? We have people who have experienced success realize, maybe not early, but at some point they realize that the reward for good work sometimes is more work. So maybe certain things you're going, I don't really want to be a success in that. I don't want to ruin what the love I have for it by being great at it. Well, there are ways to work around that, and you don't want that to stop you, especially if you love it. But think about those things that you're telling yourself and that's stopping you and that's really scaring you from moving forward and having that confidence that you worked so hard to have. Do you make decisions logically or intuitively? And how would you complete the question, what if? And again, I guess that goes into that exercise I mentioned before. What if? What if I wanted to go to the moon? What if I wanted to have a mansion in Beverly Hills or whatever? What would that look like? What would that take? These are the questions we want to ask ourselves. And then self-awareness questions on relationships. Who have you loved the most? Is it external or is it you? We, especially as women, we're taught that thinking about ourselves is selfish, but that's not true. You can't give away what you don't have yourself. And if you don't understand what gives yourself joy, how can you give joy to others? So think about who you've loved the most. Of all the relationships you have had, describe the best moment. Ask yourself if you treat yourself better than others. That's a wonderful, Maya Angelou has a wonderful quote, and it is, never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option, right? Ask yourself if you treat yourself better than others. Make sure that you are treating yourself with the love that you deserve, because again, that feeds into your self-confidence, your self-awareness, and it's so, so powerful. I'm going to pause there for just a moment and see if anyone has shared their 3 descriptions in the chat. Is it possible to check that out, Justice?
Yes, it is. We are seeing a lot of responses actually. Hopeful, kind, persistent, passionate, empathetic, curious, natural, curious, fun-loving, always learning, fun, proactive, just to name a few.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So think about how you came to those descriptive words. And for some of you, it may have been hard to come up with 3 words to describe yourself. Some of you might have been like, hey, I got this, and I just know. And I think that's wonderful. And for those of you who it was a little bit harder, that's also good too, because you really took the time to just pause and not just throw something out there just for the sake of the exercise. You really want to ponder, and what words really describe me. A lot of times it comes down to our values and what we feel is most important and how we want to show up in the world. That is a great way to think about words that describe you. I always like to say, and I tell this to my clients too, what is your billboard? So what are you advertising as it relates to you when you walk into the world? What is your billboard, and what do you want that billboard to be? Right? So think about that as you're thinking about describing yourself. So now let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. This is a term that has been out for a while now, and we hear a lot of talk about that. Imposter syndrome occurs when someone feels that they aren't as competent or intelligent as others might think, and that soon enough, or at any moment, people will discover the truth about them. Like there's another truth to discover, as if you're hiding something, which a lot of times you're not. You're just, not living in, you're not feeling that confidence that other people have in you. There are a few characteristics that feed the self-talk that can cause imposter syndrome. And the video mentioned it a little bit too. That perfectionist view. Perfectionists set excessively high goals for themselves. And when they fail to reach a goal, they experience major self-doubt and worry about measuring up. It's challenging to put so much pressure on ourselves to be to know everything, to be right all the time, to always have the answers, to just be the one. That's actually no longer really possible. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, for those of you who might have grown up then, it was nice to be the go-to person. But now we have so much technology that I think it takes the pressure off of us. People who are perfectionists, let the technology do the work. And we'll talk a little bit about another characteristic that feeds into that as well. It's so important to focus on your achievements as a perfectionist. Don't focus so much on, having to reach those goals, but look at what you have actually accomplished. Because success is rarely satisfying because you believe that, you could have done it better. What if you couldn't have? What if you did the very best you could? Allow yourself that. So the way to work around that is to learn to reframe your mistakes as learning, and that can give you the gratification, and that'll build your self-confidence, because as I mentioned before, we're constantly learning and growing as we go. So when you have those mistakes, don't think of them as mistakes. Think of them as learning. It's really interesting when children are learning and growing and they fall down, we call it learning. But when adults make mistakes, we call it mistakes. That's not really fair. We're learning and growing throughout our entire life. So allow yourself that verbiage to say, oh, what did I learn from that? And that's what you want to focus on. And then the soloist. The soloist suffers, they feel as though, asking for help reveals that they're phony. And that the soloist is a term that came from Dr. Valerie Young, and she calls that behavior the soloist. We have to realize there is no shame in asking for help. And now there's, again, so much opportunity out there to have no judgment and to just freely ask for that help that we need. Ama La Vida is one of those vehicles. By coming to us and saying, hey, these are the areas I want to work on, who can help me with that? It's a great opportunity to really chip away at some of those areas that is keeping you from your goals. It's impossible to know everything. It's impossible. So build your bench, what I call build your bench, of people that you feel are good resources. Make sure you have those people in your life that, again, they have their place. You have that friend that is your go-to person for honesty and truth. And you have those loving people. And then you have people like Ama La Vida, and you have other resources that are experts at what they do. And that way, you have that bench of people that you have your go-to, that it doesn't stall you in your progress. It allows you to keep moving forward as you are checking off the box. Hey, I need this resource for this situation and this resource for that situation. And by building that bench, that gives you the confidence to just go. I know who my resources are. I know what I need to do when I need to do it. And let me just move forward because I have those already set up. Having those and using them, it helps you feel less exposed. So set that up for yourself, and that will also help your confidence. And lastly, the expert. Those are the people that consider themselves experts, and they think they have to know everything. They'll never know enough. They fear being exposed as inexperienced and unknowledgeable. Just one thing, they get one thing wrong and suddenly they're stupid. Well, that's not true at all, right? A way to work around that, if that's how you're feeling, like if you just feel like you have to have all the answers all the time, just-in-time learning is a great tool for that. And that's a term that's, I don't want to say it's relatively new, because I guess it has been around for a while now. But if you're not familiar with it, just-in-time learning is about presenting short snippets of information when they're needed, right? Using that information immediately is considered the just-in-time. So because of technology, it makes it a lot easier to pull that information quickly and have it at your fingertips. So instead of living in that space of feeling like you have to have all the answers all the time, recognize that your resources are at your fingertips. If you need the answer in your organization, learn where those resources are in your organization. In your life, use those tools and those apps or whatever it is that helps you feel confident that you know how to get to it. The other most powerful thing is, I don't know. Sometimes admitting I don't know can be the most powerful phrase ever, because it allows the people you're talking to also admit, oh, I thought this person knew everything. I now am allowed to not know. You'd be amazed at how freeing and releasing it is to just say, you know what? I don't know. Now, you don't want to leave it there. You always want to say, I don't know, but let's find out. Always look for solutions. Always come with a solution, not a problem. But it is okay to say, I don't know. When you gain the awareness of these kinds of feelings and the self-talk that follows it, you're able to flip it into a positive and reframe those thoughts to give yourself a more optimistic and confident outlook, right? You know that I know where to find it if I don't know it off the top of my head. That's all you need, really, nowadays. Just know where to find it. At the end of the day, though, imposter syndrome is increased by our fear. Now, most people have heard someone say that fear is false evidence appearing real. Now, I've always disagreed with that statement, and here's why. Because false evidence appearing real is simply your perception, and our perceptions are real for us. So you don't want to negate what someone perceives as their truth, right? But what actually happens a lot of the time is we forget everything we know and we run. And that can look like procrastination. That can look like just out and out avoidance. But you know what to do. In those moments, you just freeze. Your mind goes blank. You get terrified. you're, again, using one of those perfectionists or expert, or you feel like you just have to have the answer and you don't. So you just disappear. That's not what you want to do. You know that you know. So don't forget everything and run. When you have confidence, you're able to remind yourself that you have the skills to face what is in front of you, especially if it is on the path of your goals. Don't skip something or avoid it, especially if it is going to get you to where you're trying to go. That is one of the worst things you could do, because it'll definitely stall you. And we can always find a reason or an excuse why we can't do something. Can't doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. So always look for that place where you can say, all right, let me pause, just take a beat, think it through, and then move forward. Because maybe there is that hiccup. And maybe you do need a moment to go, okay, I know what to do here. All right, now I can move forward. Just take that beat to remember that confidence you've already built up. Did you know though, I mean, and this is going to be an extreme example, because a lot of people are afraid to eat at a restaurant by themselves. If that's you, feel free to use the what do you call it in here, the emotions or whatever, to raise your hand or type in the chat that that's you. I didn't know that there was actually a name for the fear of eating alone, so I decided to look it up. And it's called salamangarophobia. There's an actual name for it. And now I use this as an extreme example because the bottom line is really, we just need to be comfortable with ourselves. And that is a great test to do, to go and dine alone. It's terrifying to a lot of people. But when you are confident, what others around you are thinking, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. You are comfortable being in your own skin. It takes practice and it does take time. But through that practice, and possibly even meditation and visualization, which are also techniques used to help people with phobias, you can move in the world with confidence by taking that time and doing the work. That's also what it boils down to. You have to do the work to move forward and to overcome some of these very small obstacles that are keeping you from the life you say that you want. So I promised that I was going to give you some tools and tips that you can take away with you on building that confidence and having those go-to areas that you can use in life. Before I get into the ones I mentioned here, one of the things I wanted to bring up is a lot of times, sometimes we find ourselves in situations where our emotions overtake us, i.e. we are about to cry in the moment. A wonderful technique for that, especially if we are at work or we are in a place where we just cannot handle our emotions, is to do math. And simple math. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. Because studies have shown that you cannot be logical and emotional at the same time. So in those moments, now again, it's tricky when you catch it, but in those moments when you find yourself getting emotional, because this also plays into your confidence, when you find yourself getting emotional, especially if you're having the hard conversations, then in your mind, not out loud, in your mind, doing that quick math, 1 + 1 = 1, and 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, 4 + 4 = 8, and just kind of running through that really quickly, it can bring the emotions down. If you are also capable in that moment to count backwards from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, it kind of starts to bring you down in the moment, because that's the key. Sometimes we aren't able to separate ourselves or remove ourselves from the situation. So we have to be able to do something actually in the moment that nobody else can see. So when you can use those tools, it can help to minimize the ultimate effect. And then when you can scurry away, then you can have those emotions and maintain that confidence in the moment. So I just wanted to share that with you. All right. Superhero pose. Some of you may have heard of this before. I know I got introduced to it in an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Some of you may have as well. But in a 2011 article in Psychology Today, researchers Dana Carney, Amy Cuddy, and Andy Yap wanted to know if there was any validity to the superhero pose hypothesis. And I'm always curious about that. I was curious the first time I heard it too. They didn't specifically examine the superhero stance, but they did look at two similar open postures. So here's what they did. Participants, male and female, were randomly assigned to pose in either two high power or two low power positions. The facilitator physically posed each of the participants in their poses. So after that 1 minute experiment, so they did that for 1 minute. After that, they gave the participants $2 each to either gamble, to double their money, or to hold on to it with no risk at all. So what the researchers wanted to know is whether posing in the high or low power positions would lead participants to adapt the behavioral pattern typical of the power level associated with that pose. Their answer was yes. So while 60% of low power posers chose to risk gambling their $2, the 86% of the high power posers risked their money. So many more decided to take that risk, whereas fewer of the low power posers took the risk. So it seems that participants who assume a couple of superpower type stances for a grand total of 2 minutes feel more powerful and act that way as well. So what I want to ask you to do is, and I'm going to keep going, but feel free. You can mute your camera if you have it on. If you already have it muted, feel free to take a moment right now, right where you are. Stand up. If you need to mute your video, again, feel free. Stand up straight with your fists on your hips, chest out, looking up at the sky with confidence, and hold that while I go through the rest of the information. If you want to. You don't have to do it, but if you feel so inclined, just see how that feels for you. All right, and I'm going to move on to the next tool and tip, which is to create a mantra and or a theme song. I love telling people to have a theme song. I love it with clients. Clients love it. They love trying to find the theme song that they're going to use. And keep in mind that theme song can change. It doesn't have to stay the same one. You can have a few. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful tool. But chanting mantras is an ancient practice that calms your mind and your soul. Scientific studies have found that chanting mantras like Om for 10 minutes can decrease anxiety and depression symptoms, and it really helps slow your breathing and calm the human body. Mantras have many psychological benefits. It can improve attention and change your mood, as I think we all have seen a lot of that in the mindfulness practices that have really come on the scene since COVID, right? A personal mantra is an affirmation to motivate and inspire you to be your best self. It's typically a positive phrase or a statement that you use to affirm the way you want to live your life. Its purpose is to provide motivation and encouragement to you when you need to focus your mind to achieve a goal. So some examples of mantras are listed here on this slide. Feel free to use your reaction buttons to raise your hand, or not raise your hand, but to note in the chat. You can write in the chat that if you have a personal mantra. I know mine is, it takes all kinds to make a world. When things don't make sense, saying that helps minimize my judgment, and it keeps me from going down a rabbit hole trying to make sense of stuff. It just makes me stop. And just like some you see on this slide, I am more powerful than my pain. I am in love with who I am becoming. That's a wonderful one. It's fantastic. I am in control of my life. I'm healthy. I am stable. I am sound. I am becoming the best version of myself. Oh, How great is that? To really realize that you're stepping into that person that you've worked so hard to be. That helps you with that confidence every single day. It just builds it so strongly. And then prepare to succeed. One of my favorite sayings is don't get ready, stay ready. We've all heard that a lot. And that's all well and fine, but you still have to get ready, right? You can't stay ready until you get ready. A lot of times we prepare to survive more than we prepare to succeed. So expand your goals, dream bigger. When asked how rich you'd like to be, what comes to mind? Again, feel free to share that in the chat. How rich would you like to be? What comes to mind for you? Is it a number that comes to mind? If it is, believe it or not, no matter what that number is, you've actually limited yourself. What if the answer to that question was rich enough to not waste time? What comes to mind when you hear that? I want to be rich enough to not waste time. What does that mean to you? Think about how you are limiting what you want out of life. And then know what success will look like. What will success look like for you? It's great to want to emulate some of our celebrity friends or even friends that are in our life that we feel that we deem as successful. But is that successful to you? Or are you just copying someone else? What is success for you? The proverbial dress for the position you want, not the position you have, right? Find opportunities to do things that look like your version of success. I love one of my clients shared an experience that she had. She had an opportunity to spend her morning one day playing golf with a friend at Turnia. She lives here in California. It's a well-known resort here in Southern California, and it overlooks the ocean. I know where it is. It's gorgeous. I would love to play there actually myself. And she said that after their game, she said they sat and caught up with each other and then went to lunch. And then she made it back into her office in time to take an afternoon meeting. So she had her morning and then she was able to make it back to her office to get some work done. And did I mention that it was a Tuesday, right? It was a Tuesday. That's what her life, she worked really hard to make her life look like she wanted. That is her life. So you can do visualization exercises as well as actually walk in that life in areas wherever it's opportune. When the opportunity shows up, find times and ways where you can go, this is part of the big picture I want. Let me go do that. Let me schedule some time living in that life for this day. Or on this vacation, I want to go on vacation in the way that is my ideal lifestyle. So figure out what that is. And work on your mindset. If you don't believe you are worthy, if you don't believe you can experience abundance, if you worry about what others will think, if and when you succeed, you hold yourself back. Hopefully, some of the tools we've discussed today will help with that. But when we sit and ruminate on what others think about us or what they're going to think with what our choices are, it stalls us a lot of the time. And it really boils down to you. If you have a family, a lot of times it is good to go to committee so that you're all on the same page and you're all working toward a mutual goal. But at the end of the day, you also really want to focus on what is it that you need, that you as an individual need and want out of this life. So we've covered a lot today, and I want to definitely make sure we have time for questions. So I want you to be thinking about what questions you have. You can start putting them in the chat. But before we get into any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Justice for a moment to talk to us about getting in touch and working with us going forward. So Justice, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a moment.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for everything so far. I'm going to go ahead and post my link one more time and a link to our website so you can check out a little bit more about us and some of the other coaches we do have here. But Leslie, as you are currently taking on new clients, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the things that you can do with your clients in addition to what you covered here in the lecture today?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I am taking on new clients. One area that's huge that I would love to help a lot more with, in addition to the life coaching that I do, is the public speaking. I know that's a huge one for a lot of people. They're terrified of it. And I'm a professional speaker. I've done it for many, many years. And I have worked it out so that I can give you the tools, especially on the technical side. A lot of people talk about what to say and how to formulate what they want to talk about, which I can certainly help with as well. But a lot of people forget about the technical side, the setup, especially with Zoom meetings. Are they comfortable with Zoom? What do they need to have in the room? What do they need the other people to set up ahead of time? Those kinds of things, a lot of newer speakers or people who don't speak all the time forget about those areas. So in addition to pulling together what you want to talk about and the message you want to leave with people, it's good I can also help you with the back end and what you need as a speaker for that. But also life coaching, helping you with behavioral, especially. Behavior is my superpower. And so noticing different behaviors and patterns of behavior and how that's limiting you and how to help you move forward towards your goals. That's one of the big areas that I'm really big on helping people with.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Leslie. I'm also going to drop links to our YouTube channel where you can see previous recordings as well as our Eventbrite for future ones that we have scheduled. And we'd love to see everybody again at another event. With that being said, I guess we can jump into the question and answer section of things. Feel free to come off with me and ask your question, or if you're more comfortable writing out in the chat, I will read it to Leslie. But for the last remaining time that we have here, the floor is open to anyone that wants to talk. We have a few minutes here. Just oh, hello. The floor is yours, Vivian.
Hey. I've had a number of coaches over the last couple of years, and what I find is when I'm talking to the coach, it's great. I'm feeling really confident and positive. And then when I stop the coaching, then I'm back to my regular self. So I wonder if that's something that you address.
It is something I address. That sounds very behavioral. So ideally, what needs to happen is you need tools that will carry into your life, that become habitual. And what your coach should be doing, not to diminish a previous coach, but what should have happened is they should have talked you through some of these behaviors during your coaching session and made sure that that you had made them a habit, not just how's it going, what are you doing, but made sure that you had incorporated that habit into your life so that it plays into the big picture. And also hanging that behavior onto something, like not just changing your behavior, but why do you need to change it and how will it benefit what you're doing in your life and how you want to get to it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Vivian. We have a question in the chat. Any specific advice on working on lost confidence?
Working on lost confidence, you need little victories for lost confidence. I recommend to my clients things that you can start and finish. And it sounds elementary, and a lot of people are like, yeah, but I do that all the time. Actually, you probably don't, which is things like make your bed. You can start it and finish it, and it's a success. And you tell yourself, today, if I make my bed, I'm a winner. Laundry, doing laundry, start to finish. And when I mean start to finish is do it and also put it away. Don't just do it and leave it in a pile, but start it and finish it. Washing the car, that's another great thing that's also active as well. You can start it and finish it, and you have this beautiful end result that you see. So to regain that confidence, it sounds again, elementary and simple, but to start revving up that energy to try bigger things, try looking for small victories, things that you can start and finish and immediately see the win, as it were.
And all right, it looks as though we don't have any other questions in the chat for the moment. Last call if anyone wants to ask a question. Otherwise, Leslie, do you want to give us any parting words today?
Yeah, sure. I just, with confidence, it is something that you have to do the work on, and you're going to stumble, and allow yourself that grace. Learning to be confident in yourself requires quieting a lot of the noise that we've grown up with. I think that opening video talks a lot about it, as like it's so much deeper than just going through the motions, or faking it until you make it, which I can't stand that phrase actually. But it's deeper than that. You have to look at how your growing up environment, the environment that's around you, what other people are telling you. It goes so much deeper than just change, or just change the behavior. So think about those areas that you are judging yourself on that confidence, and stop, let yourself off the hook on that, and then build from that. A technique I recommend to clients is to definitely hear your truths. What is true for you in the moment? And you don't have to share that with anybody but yourself, but be honest with yourself first, because until you're honest with yourself, you're building goals on a false positive. So it's always going to be shaky. It's never going to be solid, because you're building goals on things that actually aren't real for you. So take a moment and write down and really analyze what's true for you. And then you can build upon that, how you feel about it, what things you need to get rid of, what things you need to embrace, and allow yourself that area to grow. And that'll always help your confidence.
Awesome. And then in addition to the previously listed resources, that video that we shared will also be sent in the follow-up email. So you'll have that if you want to go back and watch that video directly. And we have one more question that says, any advice on being confident and sure of myself at work?
At work, that's tricky, because it also depends on what you do and what your position is. But overall, being confident at work depends on how you start off the day, basically. So it's also what makes you feel good. How are you showing up? Are you dressing? Are you taking the time to put time into you first? And that's how you show up. The second question you want to ask yourself at work is, do I know my job? I know that might sound like, of course I know my job, but do you? Because expectations at the workplace change, and you might not know they've changed. So touching base with your manager, or touching base with the people around you, to make sure that you know what they expect of you. I know you probably think you know what to do, and you're probably right, but there might be aspects of your role that have changed, and they may not have informed you. So it might feel like you're falling short a lot. So having that conversation, that touch base with your manager on what their expectation of you is, can also help that confidence. But I always recommend first starting out with, what makes me feel good showing up in the world, and that helps your own personal confidence, and then build on that once you're at your workplace.
Okay. And then we have one more that just came through. It says,
okay.
How can I be confident as a real estate agent if I haven't had a lot of sales?
Oh, if you haven't had a lot of sales, well, again, you have to set goals, and maybe you have to reevaluate your goals. Maybe you have to set that bar back. Maybe you have to take a step back in order to take a step forward, right? So maybe you're planning this, but you are hitting here. See where you are successful. Where have you been successful? Even if it's one sale, where have you been successful? And then build on that. Because again, sales is, man, that's a beast. So you have to find those areas where you're successful. Treats work as well. When you reward yourself for those milestones. So here's the goal, but here's the milestone. Working toward that and having something to work toward also helps some of that. So, because keep in mind with what you do or with that world, it's also environmental. So you have to look at so many other aspects that have absolutely nothing to do with you. So think about that as well, but set realistic goals for yourself.
One more just came through. It says,
Okay.
what to do when the fear happens when interviewing?
When the fear happens when interviewing,
Yes.
have a lightning rod. And what I mean by that is in the interview, in your lap, have a pen or a pencil or something that you can hold on to as you're going through it. I know that has nothing to do with the questions, nothing to do with the interviewing, but that's what's happening in your body is anxiety. And you need a way to channel that energy to get you through the interview. Because chances are you've prepared. I'm sure you've prepared for the interview. That's the other thing you can do. Make sure that you've prepared. Download questions that you can go in already having answers for. And also think of questions that you want to ask them. That is a piece that is constantly missed, and companies look at that. So when they ask you, do you have any questions for me? Think of something, go on the website, ask more about what is it, an article or something that's come up, but also in the moment when your anxiety and all of this stuff is starting to bubble up, have a lightning rod, have something in your lap that you can just channel that energy into.
Awesome. Well, it looks like that is the last of the questions. So thank you so much, Leslie, and thank you so much, everyone, for spending some time here with us today. We will give you a little bit of time back on your day, and we hope to see you at a future event. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you.